Alright, so my name is Philip. I am the owner of Arids Only, and I specialize in working with Uromastyx and collared lizards. This video is going to be a little bit semi-unprofessional, but I wanted to make a few videos specifically pertaining to Uromastyx, just to answer a lot of questions that I get with quite a bit of regularity, and also just stuff that comes up all the time. So I felt like making a video would be a helpful visual way to explain some of the differences between male and female Uromastyx. Now this is a pretty tricky topic. They're a very, very difficult genus to sex. Uromastyx lizards are usually sexually dimorphic, but that only applies to adults and only to some of the species. So I want to start by saying that there are a few caveats I got to point out at the beginning of this video. So for starters, there's a spectrum of size and accuracy with your Uromastyx, okay? So if male and female are different animals and they have different physical characteristics, the smaller the animals you're using to compare are, the closer together those differences are going to be. And the bigger those animals get, the more they grow, the further apart those differences are going to appear. So in other words, the smaller the lizard, the more difficult it's going to be to sex them. The larger the lizard, the more mature the lizard, the easier it's going to be to sex and determine whether or not you've got a male or a female. So this is pretty important. As just a general note, animals such as Moroccans, Bandids, Mollies, Dispar, Ocellata, Princeps, these animals are all exceptionally difficult to accurately sex. So it's going to be, even animals that are about 2 years old or so are going to have, it's going to be relatively tricky to sex them accurately. It's just part of the way they are, just extra difficult. In my personal experience, I found Thomasi and Ornates to be the easiest to sex, but you know, you're going to get a lot of mixed reviews about that, depending on who you talk to. So I want to start out illustrating a handful of the basic differences between males and females. And I'm going to use these year-old Ornates that I hatched last season to give a comparison. Okay, so what I'm describing now are secondary sexual characteristics. These are things that are just general guidelines, reference points, things that you can look for when trying to determine a male and a female, but they're never going to be hard and fast rules. These are just tidbits that you're going to need to keep in mind, and they're more helpful the more animals you have to compare them with. Okay, so generally speaking, as you can see with these two, males, that's this guy right here, they're going to be much more colorful. Okay. I have females that are more colorful than him, but he's also only a year old. Okay, but coloration is kind of tricky because you get male mimic females. You also get very high color females. So again, it's just a tool. Okay, but generally males have more color. They have a wider head. I don't know if you can see this comparison very well, but males, this guy, a little bit wider head, more blunt. Okay. Females are going to have a more slender head, tends to be maybe a little bit pointier, not as broad, okay? But these are just general kind of rough guidelines, okay? Males can sometimes be a little bit longer, a little more slender, slightly lengthier in the tail, but that's, again, kind of secondary. One thing is belly color. A lot of people talk about females having little to no belly color, depending on the species. Again, helpful guideline if you have a lot of animals to compare with, but not very helpful if you only have two or one. You got to be able to compare them. But as an example, this female, as you can see, has a very drab belly for the most part. It's actually somewhat colorful compared to other female Ornates, but in this case, you know, she's not insane. She's just a good example. She's a really good example, especially as a young female. Okay. The other thing you're going to see is that if you look at, if you look at the space right here, which is where the vent is, and along the inside of the thighs of the back leg, okay, you're going to see a row of pores that look a little bit like zits. Okay, in females, this will not terribly pronounced. It can be in some species, such as Ocellata or nigroventris or Maliensis, but it doesn't always have to be. Okay, but these are called the femoral pores. All right, And I'll show you what they look like on a male. But for now, this is what a femoral pores will generally tend to look like. Okay. Tail lifting to try to get a look at the hemipenal bulges is going to be the next way to kind of determine the gender of your Euro. All right. So if I be very gentle with this, you don't want to hurt the animal. It can be kind of aggressive to kind of lift their tail up. So just be nice to them. They're not too happy about it. So take the animal in one hand and gently arch the tail back like this. And if it's a male, in most cases, you're going to get a dimple on the center of the tail right past the vent, right in the middle, which is going to make it look like there are two bulges on either side of the tail just past the vent. Okay. The problem is with this particular method, this is usually really, really helpful. But in some species, again, like Flavofasciata, Nigroventris, Ocellata, and even some ornates, females will have false bulges where they'll appear to have some bulging, but then they'll disappear. And sometimes what you're going to see in some cases is that when you go to arch the tail, the animal is going to tense up. It's going to, because it freaks it out, right? It doesn't like being messed with too much. So you're going to go to arch the tail and the animal is going to tense up. And when that happens, it'll reveal what looks like bulges on right here past the vent. But if you give the animal just a moment to relax its muscles, those will disappear in a lot of females. Okay? See what this looks like on a male. So again, we got this yearling male here, a little extra color. Here's his belly. Okay, so we're going to see a lot more color, a little bit more belly striping, and a great deal of stuff, coloration and pattern on the chin and chest. Okay, then if we look at the pores here, you're going to see they're very extended, a little bit like a comb. They're waxy. You don't need to pop these or mess with them ever. Don't touch them. They use them. Okay, so this is for marking territory, and you'll see, we'll talk more about that in a few minutes, but that's what they look like on a male. If I arch the tail back, again gently, to show the hemipenal bulges, you'll see a dent right in the middle, and on either side are the male's hemipenes, which is junk. Okay? So, that's what they look like, male and female. Okay? Another thing that I want to talk a little bit about is behavior. Okay? So, behavior can be another helpful way to determine whether your Euro is a male or female. That depends a little bit on age. So, with babies, the behaviors tend to be really, really mixed. But as they grow and hit maturity, they tend to express those differences a little more specifically to their gender. Okay? So if you put two animals together, and you got one that starts doing a bunch of push-ups and starting to dance around and chase after the other, most cases, that's going to be a male, because that's breeding behavior. Not always. Some females will do this, but most males do. Okay? If one animal flips upside down, while the other animal spins on it, on the top of it, while it's upside down, that usually indicates that the animal that flipped over is a female. The flipping over is a submissive behavior. Females do it during breeding season when they're not yet ready to mate and they're approached by a male. It's very common, but that's one thing you'll see. Okay? Males also go through the habit of marking their territory. So in some cases, that's the most common cases. You see it online where people post their Euro, post a little video or a picture of their Euro, and he's in his food bowl and he's doing a little spin tornado-style dance inside that food bowl. That's the male making an effort to mark his territory. Now, if that's an adult animal, you can usually reasonably assume that that's a male. If it's a baby, not so much. I've had quite a few baby Euros that I've seen spin that I then kept and raised that turned out to be females. So it's not a guarantee all the time. All right. Another element of behavior that you're going to see with some regularity, well, you might see it if you get enough animals or spend enough time with them. You're going to see suppression that's going to affect the way you compare your animals together. And what I mean by that is this particular male, I had him in a pen with it's 5 animals total. So 4 other animals, 5 total, all of whom turned out to be males, or all of which turned out to be males. But this guy was the fastest to develop, the fastest to show all those male characteristics. And all the others looked more like a female, not just in terms of color, but also in terms of the structure of their pores and the body structure, like the head shape and things like that. The second I split those animals up, or they went to new homes, those animals that looked more female developed more of their masculine characteristics, like this animal. But it took a little bit of time. So sometimes the presence of another animal is going to affect the animal you have. That will come into play in other videos that I'll do when I'm talking about cage-mate aggression and things that you don't see. But that's what it is with relation to gender. I've noticed it in mostly my ornates and a little bit in some of the Thomasi. And I'm sure other people have noticed it in some of their other species, but for now, that's the main way I've noticed it is with ornates and Thomasi. But suppression is really important as well. So hopefully all of this stuff has been helpful and informative to a certain degree. If I missed anything or if anything was confusing, just send me a message or something, or whatever you like, and I'll hopefully get back to you. Just remember that it takes a little bit of experience and time and spending time with these animals to really get an idea of what you're looking at, when you can be more sure that it's male, more sure that it's female. And so always ask people for help. I do it all the time. I send messages to my friends in Europe and other people who work with Uromastyx, and I say, hey, I think this is what I'm seeing here, but I can't tell. Can I get your input? Because we can all learn from each other. So hopefully this helps out, and yeah, get some Euros.